With all the talk lately of Activision being acquired by Microsoft and what old franchises might come back, I thought today would be a great time for me to bring up one of my favorites from the back catalog, Blast Chamber. Blast Chamber was a 1 to 4 player future sport game released in 1996 for the Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation, and while I think that the chances of it actually coming back are pretty slim, it was a game I enjoyed quite a bit as a kid, and when I revisited it for this video, I still had a ton of fun. Before strapping on some bombs to our chests and playing some sports of the future, why don't you take some time and go over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames. It's a great way to support us and you'll get some great perks along the way. You can get access to our Discord server, some early access to videos, exclusive streams, and more. Again, it's patreon.com/idreamofindiegames, and now back to Blast Chamber. As previously mentioned, the game was published by Activision, and they are one of the oldest video game publishers that are in the industry today. In the early days of home video game consoles, some employees of Atari weren't happy with the way that things were being run. They decided to split off and start their own company and release games for the Atari 2600. Releasing games like Freeway, Pitfall, and River Raid, they were immediately known for making high-quality games that are still considered classics today, but they're more recently known for releasing franchises like Call of Duty, Crash Bandicoot, and Guitar Hero. While the publisher does still exist, unfortunately the developer does not. Developed by ATD, aka Attention to Detail, they were a UK-based development house started in September of 1988 by 5 graduates from Birmingham University. They started by making games for the home computer like Night Shift and Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, the action game, before moving on to Cybermorph, Blue Lightning, Battlemorph, as well as Mutant Penguins on the Atari Jaguar. It was after this string of games that Activision tapped them to create a new unique game for them. According to the producers of the game at Activision at the time, they said, quote, "We wanted our product to be unique. With so many first-person shooters, so many driving games, we wanted to make something different that made a game what it was supposed to be, an original game that draws people in. We wanted to make a game that's fun with 1, 2, 3, or 4 players." Man, isn't it ironic to think that Activision, of all companies, thought that there were too many first-person shooters out there? My, how times changed. Blast Chamber is split up between both modes for single-player and multiplayer, and while multiplayer can be played on its own, I'm going to start by talking about the strictly single-player mode known as Sole Survivor, taking place in the future where there is a sport where you lock yourself inside of a giant cube known as a chamber with a bomb strapped to your chest. There is a timer that ticks down, and once it hits 0, that bomb goes off. With the single-player Sole Survivor mode, you have to get the crystal and put it in your base to prevent the bomb from exploding. The major hook of going into these chambers is that you can rotate the whole entire room around by pushing up against arrows against the wall. By pushing up against these arrows, you're going to rotate the chamber 90 degrees or 1 turn to the next side, and it becomes kind of a puzzle game to figure out which way to rotate to be able to gain access to the crystal and then the reactor to put that crystal in. Things start simple enough as you make your way through the 40 different chambers, but it does quickly evolve with more traps and hazards preventing you from moving on. While at first it may seem like it's easy enough to jump over the spikes and pits, you quickly forget that once you rotate a room, you're going to drop down and you might land in one of those hazards. On top of that, some later levels will even add extra arrows that you don't need. They're there just to throw you off. It might throw you into a trap or just make you waste more time. If you do manage to beat a level, you will then get a score based on how much time is remaining on the bomb timer. You're definitely working for going as quickly as possible, and if you get the best time, you can save your initials. Still very old school in that way. Also very old school is you have a set number of lives to complete the puzzles. If you lose them all, it's game over, but every so often you can earn enough points to get an extra life. 40 levels isn't a ton, but it definitely will take some time for you to get through it as you get used to the mechanics of the game. But really, the single-player Sole Survivor wasn't the main focus of the game, as it really was on the multiplayer. In 1996, being able to play a 4-player game was still pretty novel, as it required you to buy an extra adapter to play with more than 2 controllers. There weren't a ton of games that supported these adapters, especially if you were looking something outside of traditional sports games. Blast Chamber was one of the first non-traditional sports games to support these adapters, though being a future sport game, we are kind of arguing semantics here. Multiplayer takes the same similar concept of having a bomb strapped to you with the timer ticking down, but now you can have up to 3 other people in that chamber competing with you. No longer a puzzle aspect to the game, it's now more straight up action as you're competing with those people to get that crystal. There's only one in the chamber at a time. Each side of the chamber has a different colored reactor corresponding to that colored player. Once you pick up the crystal, the timer will freeze, and if you put it into your own reactor, you will add time to your timer. But put it into one of your opponent's reactors and it takes time away. There are 20 different chambers to pick from while playing multiplayer, and they're all set up to be 4-sided symmetrical to keep things even. When a room is rotated, you will stay being able to stand up, but everybody else will fall. And depending on what hazards are there, that can be dangerous for them. At the very least, it will give you some time to keep the enemies incapacitated to move on to be able to go to the next reactor or arrow. The bottom line is this creates a nice simple pick up and play gameplay style with some risk-reward mechanics. For example, the timer is running low on your bomb. You're holding the crystal, but your reactor is not on that side. Do you put it into whatever enemy has that side to take away from them? Or do you take the risk of getting shoved to get that crystal knocked out of you by running over to the next arrow to rotate to your reactor? That's right, there are no fouls in this. You can just shove somebody to knock that crystal out of their possession. The controls are simple. You move around with the D-pad. You have a button for jumping and a button for shoving, with the rest of the buttons just used for moving the camera around a bit, although it doesn't really go that much as you have this pretty static view of everything. Multiplayer is split up into 2 different modes. You have free-for-all and eliminator. The difference is that with free-for-all, there's a set time limit and you just see who dies the least amount of times, but the eliminator mode is once you die, you are out for the remainder of that round. Within both of these modes, there's also 2 different options on how you play them. You can either select custom playlist of which levels you're going to play through, or do a tournament where you have to consecutively go through all 20 chambers in a row. The person with the highest score at the end wins. Blast Chamber is also an example of a game that plays way better than it looks. Quite simply, the game is ugly. Just look at this video. You have a 3D world with some ugly 2D sprites for the characters and the power-ups. As was common at the time, the 3D elements look much better on the PlayStation than they do on the Saturn, but unfortunately the Saturn 2D stuff doesn't really look much better than the PlayStation, which is usually its strength. No matter which version you're playing, you're just going to get ugly little blobs that are running around that you can only really tell what's happening because you know which color you're looking at. If this game were to be brought back, this easily would be the element that I would think would need the most retooling to be able to make it palatable for today's gamers. While I can get through playing it today, I know it can be a tough sell for some people. Unfortunately, the sound department also would need a lot of work, as it's just a bunch of repetitive music and the constant announcing of who has the crystal or what power-up was collected. There's also a grunting sound that you hear whenever you shove, so if you play with button mashers, expect to hear that sound in your sleep. Unfortunately, there was no PC version that was ever released for Blast Chamber, so the 2 console versions are the only way to play today. Thankfully, being a PS1 game, it is still backwards compatible on a PS3 if you still own one, and that gives you the added ability to be able to use it with HDMI and having 4 wireless controllers. I have so many horror stories about growing up with a Sega Saturn and that 6-player adapter and just the little rat's nest of wires everywhere. Thankfully, they gave you stickers to put on the wires so you could follow who was where, but man, was that a mess. Again, I really don't think that this is going to be a game that's ever going to be revisited, but it would be nice to think that it is possible. I think in today's gaming market, it could do well with the focus on online multiplayer. If you retain the same simple gameplay but improve the graphics and sound, I think that's a recipe to be able to get a nice following online. I think the gameplay style also lends itself well to being able to add more players, changing the shapes of levels, and maybe even having unlockables for different types of customization of your character. But in the end, I feel this is a pipe dream, and the reality is you're only going to be able to play the original, but that can still be fun with a group of friends even today, so long as they can get by the game's faults. Is there anybody else who has memories of playing Blast Chamber back in the day? Let us know in the comments below what your parties were like. If not, this might just be one of those typically underseen and underrated gems.